Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone who is listening at the moment to our first Urban Dialogues webinar. We are doing this from Tecnológico de Monterrey, Mexico, but we have guests from different parts of the world and hoping we will have a very interesting discussion this morning. The audience is also from all over the world, and I would like to welcome everyone who has tuned into this webinar. We will have 3 presentations of, let's say, 15 minutes each, after which there is space for a question and answer for another 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat box so we can see them and direct the questions as soon as we have read them to one of the speakers. This webinar is about the just city, and I think one of the things that is very important is that the city is an environment that is open to everyone. It's a bit of a buzzword, I guess: equitable, inclusive, sustainable. How do we make sense of this? How do we, as urbanists, as designers, as people that work in the city, how do we make sense of a city that is really open to everyone? The focus of the seminar will be that we think about the city as designers, as urbanists, architects, and what makes us different from people that are working in, for instance, doing great work in social work related to equity and vulnerable communities. What is our added value to this? How can we create a city that is really equal and inclusive? And to start with a little question about this, you might have seen that we have a very diverse panel. So we are 4 white men of a respectable age. And you could say, well, that's not really inclusive because we didn't invite other species in this webinar. The question about this is this really also with us a bias in how we are discussing this kind of topics and issues? Is this something that we forget about when we are working really hard to include everyone, and then at the same time we weren't very successful in this? So my first questions to the 3 speakers of this morning will be: what is your opinion about this? How can we get out of this bias that we obviously have? Greg, do you want to start?
Hi.
Oh,
okay. Continue then.
Hi everyone. Hi Rob. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I think it's a fair comment based on the visual evidence of who we are on this panel. But I guess thinking about this, I can only really go from my own experiences, and I would say that landscape of exclusion, is very wide. It's very deep, and it's very far-reaching. And again, from my personal experiences, I'm first generation graduate. In other words, I was the first person in my family to go to a university. I came from a struggling mining community in northern England, and I can understand and relate directly to the frustrations that of perhaps and the comments that have come to you on this webinar, really. So I understand where they're coming from. I've experienced them myself to a certain degree, and as one of the reasons why I'm at this webinar and focusing on what I'm doing, what I've been doing over the last 10-15 years. That's my position, Rob.
So thank you. First, I would like to say thanks to Rob for organize this talk and dialogue and the invitation, and of course to Craig and Emanuele. So to comment about the fact that we are man here. I think it's an accident. And I would like to believe that. So is because I think the natural way now, even and mostly if you talk about the just city, is to visualize and represent the reality. And if, for example, if we talk about the things that are happening in Mexico in terms of landscape design and urban design, I could share or think in very, very powerful initiatives that some women are leading the process. And if we think as well about how the process of informal and emergent areas improve and how they build their life there. So the mothers, the mothers of the places and the women are more powerful in reality. So it's not only trying to say that is a fact as well. So it's real that the women forces shape in terms of the just city in many different ways, but in terms of the just city, the reality. So I think we all agree that we will share ideas here, but of course, I think we could talk more later about.
Great, thank you, Alejandro. Emanuele?
Rob, again, thank you very much for the invitation to you, Craig and Alejandro. And let me tell you one thing first, is that I had the opportunity to work with you a little bit about the general idea of these webinars, of these dialogues. And we saw together the topics and also some guests that we have along the year. And of course, along the year, the balance between genders, ages, and stories of people, I think it's quite balanced. And today is a case we are 4 men here. And if someone doesn't know the general panorama of all the program, of course, it's a big mistake, a big mistake related with the relation with inequality, while we are speaking about just city, and in particular because speaking about justice or vulnerabilities, as we will do today, is strongly related with perception of people and inclusion of everyone. We cannot think about just city or vulnerabilities without thinking to everyone, human and non-human also. So I think it's very, very important to start the dialogue with this question, with this remark, and again, as Alejandro said, when we work in vulnerable communities, for example, the role of civil organization are mainly led, by women. So I think it's very important this discussion and this first discussion, this first question at the beginning of the dialogue. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Emanuele. Thank you, Alejandro and Craig as well for your insights on this. And I'm sure that we will have a more mixed panel in the future urban dialogues, and we will make sure that we take a critical eye on who we exactly have in the panel next time. So let me start with thanking you, the 3 speakers of this morning, for your time and being here from different places of the world. Craig is based in Delft in the Netherlands. Alejandro is coming from Medellin, and Emanuele is in Chihuahua in the north of Mexico. So I think we have, in that sense, we have really a nice spread around the world. I think we start with the first presentation now of Craig Martin. He is a professor in the Delft University of Technology and the Faculty of Architecture there. He's originally, as he said, from the UK. And one of the things that is very interesting to me in his work is that he is working as an architect, but also working in a way that is can be characterized by participatory planning processes in living labs, starting, the dialogue, not only by sending and talking, but also by let's say listening to people in the first place. So instead of coming with solutions, seeing what kind of questions are there. So Craig, if you can share your screen, I'm very happy to have you here and listen to you.
Okay, let's work out. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, we're all fine. Yeah, great.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. I thought I'd lost you all then. Okay, yes, thanks for having me on today. Yes, a little bit about me. Hold on, how do we move this on? A little bit about me. Yeah, I'm a transdisciplinary has very much become a part of my life really in the last 7 or 8 years. I go more towards reaching out and going out of my comfort zone. I'm an Englishman abroad, as Rob just mentioned there. That's very transdisciplinary in itself. I have a PhD in urbanism and architecture, a Bachelor of Arts. I was a head of a technology at Manchester University there. But I'm also an architect, as Rob just mentioned, in a engineering and technological department. And I'm quite, I guess a hybrid in some ways. I focus on social engagement in a university of technology. So a little bit about my University of Technology there in Delft. Technology wants societal. We talk about that. It's a key mission and a key aim of our university. Delft wants to have engineers that are solving societal issues, that have a social responsibility. I led a project called the Roadshow with professors, and we traveled all around the world really. And my first real experience of engagement was in Belfast, and that was really more by accident more than anything else. And maybe that says something about our profession in a way. And I realized the added value of it. And later on, I did a project in Izmir. So I didn't really learn from that, but in Izmir, I realized that this is a gentleman from Izmir who told us about his self-built house, a house that was built on the Ataturk Mahalla on the hillsides above Izmir. And he told us about the amount of insulation he put on his roof. But it seemed that the team and myself weren't really geared into listening to what he had to say and involving him in the project. So I started to try and change that. So from my perspective, we talk about societal challenges, but does technical need societal? I think it needs it more than anything else. I think it's more of a technical challenge than a societal one, I think, to engage and reach out to communities generally, let alone vulnerable ones. So here's some of my my lessons learned or my observations doing these projects over the years in different places. We're very technically minded from our backgrounds, from our profession, urbanism, architecture, engineering. But I think we have to be a bit more socially minded to truly engage with communities, particularly vulnerable ones. The language we use, I use this language myself. We talk about non-technical communities being non-technical, non-academic, non-expert, stakeholders, users. Even my studio is named user-centered. Homes described as laboratories. Our very language isn't really so engaging with communities, I'd say. Foundational roots, Technical University of Delft there, it's a long-established university based on technological knowledge. Our logo is the torch of fire. This image there is an interpretation of Prometheus, who stole fire from Zeus, and he gave it to society. He gave it to humans. He gave it. And I just wonder whether that relationship means anything anymore. I think we need a different kind of relationship. I often find that in the early days when I started off my academic teaching career, that we're always on the back foot you know, with what we did in our courses and how we taught architecture and engineering and technology, you know, staff and students are very unfamiliar with working alongside communities. So I just wonder why that was really. I tried to frame it with a theory. Done this fairly recently, actually. How can I explain this difficulty? And I look at CK theory. You might be you're familiar with it by Actual and Vail. They look at, say, CK theory. It's about creativity, understanding how to describe it and relate it to innovation. I look at two communities here. There's the blue side, which is the knowledge community, which is validated and rational, very much like a university. Knowledge decidable, true or false. And then you have the other more concept community according to Actual and Vail. But I relate it to society itself, because from our perspective as academics, as architects, and I'm generalizing here, let's put that, I'm putting my experience on this. We see society sometimes as unknown, ambiguous, undefined, you know, undecidable, not true or untrue. And it can be a fearful place for us. So I'm just trying to work out how can we do more engagement. So going from that blue side to that yellow ambiguous side, you've got some images there. That's the Green Village in Delft on the right there, knowledge center, an innovation landscape within the campus. And then on the image on the left there is actually a community 11 minutes away in Voorhof, which is a vulnerable community. And a gentleman there was showing me and my students how he lives in this sort of autonomous energy autonomous landscape there and the difficulties that he faces. So how do we go from one side to the other? We have to extend our comfort zone, and that's how we can get further in there. And there's ways of doing that, but there's challenges that we need to understand as well. And then we can bring that knowledge back into our blue knowledge community and change that and become better at it each time we do it. Yeah, building trust, that's probably the hardest thing to do. We can look at designing new cities, sustainable visions, facades, shared landscapes, but actually that I found the hardest thing to do is to build trust with communities. And what you have to do there is you have to be live, on site, site specific, and you have to take you and your knowledge to work alongside people in the heart of the communities. This is Preston. We went to Preston several years ago, and the heart of the community there was the Gujarat Hindu temple, and that's where we brought the studio to allow people to come in and feel trusted in the process and familiar with the environment that we were wanting to work with them in. Did a similar thing in Nicosia as well. Nicosia is a divided city, and I took the project to Nicosia, and I put it in the middle of the buffer zone there. So Turkish Cypriot North people from there could come and join the project, as well as the Greek Cypriot South. So it was a bi-communal project. So this is the aim of the project was sustainable visions and technology, but actually I started to see it more as a way, a methodology of engaging people in the processes of how their communities can go forward in a sustainable future. So this is inside the buffer zone, yeah, a UN peacekeeping force. This is the old Lidra Hotel that's now a barracks, and another building next to it, which was their home for cooperation, which is in the buffer zone. So there we had people from both sides working together. Belfast. I took the project into a school on one of the days there. This was a secondary school, and it was very insightful to hear 14-year-old students talk about how they envisaged a successful community, and we learned a lot from that. And we saw their vulnerability, and we thought, well, you know, perhaps we've got to be a bit more vulnerable as well. And I think that's like a key thing. The image to the left there, that was by Professor Greg Keefe. He was our urban lead during the project. The community to the north there, as you can see on that image on the left, it was designed to be locked down by an armored vehicle in 4 minutes. So this tells you that community is vulnerable in so many ways. You just wouldn't You couldn't really envisage it before actually going to see that community and what challenges it faced. So lessons learned, yeah. People are volunteers, yeah. They're passionate about their families and future. You have to recognize that. First time I've ever really said sorry in a presentation. I might say it at the end, but I'm sorry, but families don't wake up in the morning concerned about the energy transition and climate change, the things that we worry about in our academia or whatever, you know. They don't. They have other pressing daily matters to deal with, and you have to build that in. You know, what's in it for them in a project from an architectural, urbanistic, engineering point of view. It always has to involve them and their dilemmas. That's my experience. We talk about we're experts in sustainability, carbon accounting, urbanism, but communities and people in there are experts too, and we have to understand that value. They're experts in how they live now, and how they may want to live in the future, their aspirations, and we need to tap into that. It's a great resource. Communication is key. You've got to be visual, you've got to have proper language, you've got to be able to bring everyone into that conversation. No longer is communication a flyer to introduce your project. It's in the very words you speak, I think. So comfort zone, yeah, it's coming out, going through these various zones of your comfort, those K comfort zones I talk about, this K for knowledge, this blue environment that we were taught within, you know, and going towards this yellow zone, this society. As Rob mentioned earlier, yeah, I've learned that actively listening to people is probably the hardest thing for me to do, but is definitely the most significant thing we can all do, I think. And that's how you can move closer to people in their communities and understand their dilemmas. Yeah, be open and share your vulnerabilities. We talk about in this webinar, vulnerable communities. Well, yes, but we have to be as or more so, more vulnerable than them. We got to really show what we're about, what our worries are. You know, showing our ideas as they happen is a very vulnerable thing for designers and architects to do. They normally present them later on, generally speaking. Expectations as well. You know, we come with wonderful ideas, but everyone in a project in the community has to be aware of the expectations. What you're going to get out of this. You know, I think it's important that we always understand what those expectations are in a project. So yeah, bringing those ideas back with the arrow there, go into a growth zone essentially, so we can learn better next time. And on about that next time, well, one of the big things, you can imagine that you've got this blue zone and this yellow zone. Well, actually, society itself has a knowledge zone. It has what it's familiar with, what it's used to. It's true or false. And it sees our projects, our profession as some strange concept zone, some strange zone that's ambiguous and a bit vague and a bit fearful as well. And that can turn into research fatigue, a term you might be familiar with. That's a major issue to our work being perceived by the community as a positive added thing. If you keep going into a community with a studio and offering nothing as you leave, the next project that comes along has an even bigger challenge to face in terms of engagement. So it's how do you keep that going after the students have gone, after you've moved on yourself? How does the university, how does your architectural practice, how does it keep going to make sure there isn't that research fatigue where community is actually fed up with you coming in because nothing is seen to be done? So you've got to really, I think, face that. I've often found that one of the biggest outcomes or the biggest takeaways from a project that we've been to in all these different cities and all these different communities is not necessarily the ideas themselves. It's the fact that people come together, people in the community you assumed knew each other, but they actually don't. And I think that's creating this safe mediating space between citizens, students, academics, architects, municipalities, and community initiatives. It's a wonderful place where people can get to meet each other and be on the same page with, test ideas out in a safe environment. I've got, I think, a few minutes left, so a couple of slides more. An ecotone of inclusivity. Well, an ecotone is a space. It's a biological term, but it's a space between two communities. So you see my blue community there and that yellow community there, that societal and that academic or professional community. Well, I think there's a need for an intermediate space, this ecotone, this space in between of inclusivity. And I'll explain what I mean by that. This is the final slide, really. I'll sum it up in 3 points. You know, I talked about Delft University and how Prometheus gave fire technology to humans. We've got to really decide, are we working for society, to society, or with society, with vulnerable communities? Well, I hope it's with, actually, working alongside, bringing everyone onto the same page and work together. And that's the most easy thing. So this ecotone where this happens, well, I think you should have in terms of a university at least, it should have a physical presence perhaps. So part of the city is in a university campus, perhaps in your own campus in Monterrey there. And part of the campus is actually in the city, in the community itself, and it's there 24/7, and everyone can see the added value for each part, so it's mutually beneficial. That will totally increase meaningful engagement, I think. I think more than a MOOC or more than an occasional project going into the community, I think, you know, it has to go to that level. And the final point there I'll make, I think there's an urgent need. It's a strange word, and not. I think there's an urgent need to institutionalize 21st century skills, or as what I call societal skills, to engage with this transdisciplinary landscape of true involvement with communities from our profession, if you like, and that would help with working with communities, I believe. So what is known as soft skills, I think it's quite a demeaning term, are actually societal skills, which are probably the most important thing to do. And I will end it there, Rob. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Craig. It was very, very interesting, and I think will spark a discussion later on. So thank you for your contribution to this webinar. We move forward to Emanuele now. Emanuele Giorgi, the Director of Research of the School of Architecture, Arts and Design in Monterrey. And he is originally, as he said, already from Italy, where he did his PhD, both in engineering and in architecture. So I think talking about these different worlds of knowledge and society, maybe he can unite them. He's working on very interesting projects. One of the latest additions to his portfolio is designing for vulnerable communities. And I think that's right in the heart of what we are talking about in this morning. So Emanuele, if you want to share your screen and present your work, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much, Rob. This was I took the freedom to prepare a presentation about the three projects that you are working with in this period. It's a project that I've done, or a project that are ongoing. Starting with the first one, Design for Vulnerables. That actually, as Craig said now, is more design with vulnerables, no? And actually this change from for to with was one of the results of the project that we started in 2021. And then Vulnerable Socioecotones is a project that we started in 2022. Basically is a continuity of Design for Vulnerables together with a project from Guadalajara led by Maria Elena de la Torres, where we understand that we want to try this to study the relation between vulnerability, social vulnerability, and environmental vulnerabilities in a very complex context, like the context of Ciudad Juarez on the border with the United States. And then in 2023, we just started this Design for Vulnerables Technology Challenge, because in the last 2 years we saw how technology in vulnerable communities is something that can be dangerous, but it can be the solution. I mean, technology has a great opportunity to reduce vulnerabilities in vulnerable communities, but at the same time, it's a risk. In vulnerable communities, we cannot introduce an accessible technology. There is the risk that the gap of vulnerability between less and more vulnerable situation can increase a lot. So we would like to understand how the built environment can change to facilitate the introduction of accessible technology. And when we speak about technology, it can be from a laptop to the rediscovering of vernacular technology or vernacular techniques, no, to approach contemporary challenges. So here is, as we said, we are working in the north part of Mexico, in particular in the north part of the state of Chihuahua. We've designed for vulnerables, which started in the capital city of Chihuahua, vulnerable socioecotones in Ciudad Juarez, which is on the border with US, in Ciudad Juarez, bordering with El Paso. And then this new project, Design for Vulnerables Technology Challenge, which is spread in 4 communities nearby the capital city of Chihuahua, but also in the Sierra Tarahumara in Valle-Siachic. As I told you, I took the freedom to prepare the presentation speaking about the contest, because as already Craig said and Alejandro at the beginning said, the topic of justice and the topic of vulnerability are strongly related with the contest. Just to tell you that all the materials that I will show you today and the materials that we collect along these 2 years and a half of project are available on designforvulnerables.com webpage if someone wants to see it. And I want to start with this project in Ciudad Juarez, which is actually yesterday morning we woke up with a very bad news from Ciudad Juarez with 40 migrants dead in prisons for migrants for a fire, and this represents one of the big problems that Ciudad Juarez have. Is a city full of environmental and social issues that are a very important emergency. In Ciudad Juarez, after a general analysis of the city, we focus on these 2 red areas, which we understood are the most difficult one. And speaking about justice cities and vulnerabilities, I want to show you this map, which is basically represent the land in this southeast part of the city, and showing you as the city of Ciudad Juarez is an archipelago. I mean, it's made by islands which have not continuity with the other parts of the city. And this means that if someone lives or someone born in one of these vulnerable areas, it's very difficult for them to leave the community in the vulnerable area. In particular, I want to tell you the story of this midwife, the woman who helped other women to give birth, to give life. And basically, she has access. She has the right to the health systems, the public health system, but she never attends to the doctors because she cannot reach the hospitals. Why? Because she had to walk a lot of kilometers without security, without safety, and without a good environment. So vulnerability in this case passed from this archipelago, no, that we have in the city. In another part of Ciudad Juarez, which is in the southwest of the city, it's called Kilometros, and basically is a 10 kilometers long road, along with some communities have been developed without the government. And so in this case, in this area, there are a lot of problems of lack of services. Lack of services, for example, of water. Every house has outside of the house this water place, because they are asking for the pipe to bring them water. No, in this case, so vulnerability is related with the lack of services. If we move in the capital city of Chihuahua, in Paso del Norte, where we have a 4 years long connection with the communities, we are working here with these 2 project, and Passo del Norte basically is a community which is part of the municipality of Chihuahua, is part of the city of Chihuahua, but they feel totally excluded from the city because of a river, because of a highway which separates them from the main part of the city. And this perception of be excluded is something that they perceive a lot as the main problem, the main issues that they have. And for example, the only connection is this pedestrian bridge, but as you can see, it looks like a cage, no? So it's as a psychological perception of the space is totally bad. And in particular, speaking about the gender equity, is something related with problems because there is the danger, no, to be closed within this pedestrian bridge, this cage. So in this case, the role of the built environment, the role of infrastructure is very important for the wellness and for the vulnerability and for the equity, no, within a community. Then I want to tell you about two other communities. One is La Regina in Julimes, in the south part of the state, of the capital of Chihuahua. And in this case, as you can see, there is a main river with a lot of agricultural fields that can take life from the river. But in this case, there is a natural pollution, natural contamination of fluoridate and arsenics, which create big problems of health in the communities. And they have it is very interesting with a red line, I resume, very interesting systems of hot water with endemic species. So on one side, they try to solve the problem of vulnerabilities related with fluoridate and arsenics with some plants of inverse osmosis, which can attend somehow the needs of the community, but is creating again contamination in the land. And they have a fantastic environment, which is this system of hot water with endemic species, which actually are not used very well by the community. I mean, they have a big potential there, but it's not used so much. And another community is in the north part of Mexico, of Chihuahua, and this is Nuevas Delicias. Nuevas Delicias, similar the case to the previous one, it's an agricultural communities. This is the community, and basically a community with fields, and then with a big land, big valley that are basically just for cows, no? And here, the issues of vulnerability is related with agriculture again. We have the production of nuts, which is one of the most important production in the region, but is, as you can understand, is totally not sustainable. Nuts require a lot of water, and a lot of water require also this valley for the cows, but water is missing more and more, because in the last 10-12 years, the level of underground water came from -4 meters to -100 meters. So in this case, the production, the agricultural production is going to create a big state of vulnerabilities because of a bad kind of agriculture. Then the last community I want to tell you about before to arriving to some conclusions is Base Asiatic in the Sierra Tarahumara. Base Asiatic is 5 hours away from the capital city of Chihuahua, and in Base Asiatic they have a fantastic forestal environment. Base Asiatic is famous because one of the highest waterfall in America, so they have a fantastic opportunity, fantastic potentialities for tourism and natural environment, but at the same time, mining activity are destroying this environment. As are destroying the environment, they are also destroying the social relations within the communities. So based on this analysis that we made along the 2 years long projects, we came out with this recap of the principles of design for vulnerables. And again, when we say design for vulnerables is with vulnerables, with the community itself, no? The engagement of the communities in all these activities are at the base. We see this concept of design for vulnerables as relation between challenges that we have, and challenges are global challenges related with the topic of the Anthropocene and the environment, but also design for vulnerables as a matter of understanding again, understanding the challenges and bring these challenges to a local level, and then understanding how to focus on these challenges which are at the local level to understand which are the vulnerabilities that we have to deal with, and then strategies as the way to approach the local aims and to solve this situation of high vulnerabilities. And of course, when we speak about strategies, we speak about persons and the environment, communities and the environment. Now, so we see this concept of design for vulnerable as these Krebs cycles, no, that create energy and potential to solve problems and to improve the justice in the cities. All these activities that we developed in the first part of the project, Design for Vulnerables, in 2021, came out with this publication of an edited book of Design for Vulnerable Communities, edited and published in 2022, which collect the experience of different experts from different fields. So it's a totally interdisciplinary works that show how all the disciplines at the end are related with working in the built environment, trying to solve vulnerable situation. And these are the remarks that I would like to share with you as conclusion, seeing the just cities based on a view of vulnerabilities. First of all, we have to say that everybody is vulnerable. No, we cannot say that there are vulnerables and not vulnerable. Everybody is vulnerable to climate change. But of course, if you have a more political, economical, or technological powers, your vulnerability is reduced. So we have to understand how to work, no, with the issues of give power, political, economic, and technological power to everyone. Vulnerabilities are contextual. So again, Craig and Alejandro already said it. We cannot think about vulnerability if we don't have a deep understanding of the social and environmental context. And this brings also the fact that it's difficult to measure vulnerability or justice, because if we can measure very well risk, some indicators can help us to understand vulnerabilities, but at the end, vulnerabilities as justice is something that comes from the history of every person. So the relation with the context and with the personal experience that we have, I think, is fundamental, no, in this discussion. Then I think one of the most important issues is consciousness. Craig already said, no, the knowledge, or the fact that several times we are too much focused on the daily activities that we cannot reflect on, and we cannot make ourselves conscious about the situation where we live or the vulnerabilities that we have. So the goal of the experts, no, I think, of the community and the role of the citizens basically is to develop this interdisciplinary work that contribute making everyone conscious about risk and vulnerabilities. No? So again, the concept of consciousness was developed very well in a chapter in this book by Cristian Molina from the EGADE Business School of Tec de Monterrey, with a relation between conscious in business and conscious in design for vulnerable. So at the end, again, this responsibility that as designer we have is to facilitate the processes of transformation, to reduce vulnerabilities, and to facilitate impact of civil organization and to promote just cities. As you said, Rob, at the beginning, which is the main difference between these civil organization that work in vulnerable communities, and which is the role or responsibility that we have as designers, I think is related with this topic. civil organization work in an emergency, so it can solve and make fantastic work in all these vulnerable communities to solve some punctual problems, but we have the responsibility to develop now a built environment where people can fertilize itself and fertilize the community itself. So basically it is where my conclusion that I would like to share with you for this consideration on just cities and vulnerabilities.
Thank you so much, Emanuele. It was a great talk and fantastic insights and projects you've been working on over the last couple of years. So yeah, great. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
And we move on to our third speaker of the day, Alejandro Echeverri. He is from Medellin in Colombia. He's the only one that still lives in his own country where he's born. So that is a very special position, I guess. And many people around the world, they know the work of the transformation that happened in Medellin. And Alejandro is one of the key persons in facilitating that process in Medellin. At the moment, he is the director of Urbanism, a specific research center within the University of Medellin in Colombia. And he is also my colleague in the Faculty of Excellence, focusing on social urbanism. So welcome, Alejandro. And if you're ready, you can share your screen and start your presentation. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Rob, for the invitation and for the introduction. I am just leave the direction the urban. I am not now the director of Urban since 2 weeks ago. Because okay,
I didn't know that news yet. So
yeah, Natalia Castaño is in charge, but of course I've been working here in Urban and mainly in Tech of Monterrey with you, with the school and the Center for the Future of Cities. So I would like to share some ideas that came from the processes that I've been involved in Medellin and in other places, but mainly in Medellin, Colombia. First, I would like to leave this title in relation with Endel's journey for an equitable ciudades equitativas, equitable cities. That means that we are always in process and transition of improvement. Any advance, any improvement that you develop, then appear another challenge and another crisis as well change things. So this is the reality. I am not saying that it's good or bad, but it's important to know that. So first, when we talk about the margin or the inclusion, so it's important to know that we are talking a reality that is not only in the context where we are living. I could say, and I wanted to put in question marks this word of margin or informality that in many cities are not the margin, is the reality or the main reality. I came from Lima. I've been in Lima 2 weeks ago, and the 60% of Lima is still process of informality. The right picture is Lima, and the left picture is the upper part of the slopes of Medellin. But to have in context this question in relation with the world, that is important that to compare the urban population and the precarious settlements in 2018 and the projection that we are going to have in 2050, more than 2 billion of people is the future scenario. But in the global South cities, this proportion changed completely, and is in many cities it will be 50 and 50 or 60% 40. So I will share the context of Medellin. I am not going to explain in detail. I will go fast through the experience where we were in the government. But the reality is that, like any other Latin American cities, that we have to understand that we have to connect physically, but in terms of process, economy, social, those different worlds that we have. In Medellin, in the 80s, we have this combination of poverty, precarious condition, and the cartels and the violence that we lose the streets and the public space. We call that time the time of this dark street, because it was impossible to go out from the streets after 5 p.m. in most of the places of the city. So the challenge that we have at that time, and when we arrived, I be part of the government in 2004. We started the government with Sergio Fajardo, and we thought that we have to break those yellow lines that works like the frontiers in the different territories and different places in the city, doing some connections, some improvement, some public transport systems, some public services, and at the same time different kind of programs in terms of culture and education. I have some conversation, and I had some conversation with Alejandro Valdivieso about the region of and personally my life at that time in relation to how I've been connected with the reality of inclusion and the city in this magazine of Harvard in relation to how to draw Medellin, because like urban designer and landscape designer, I always be trying to work in the barrios, trying to understand the morphology of the natural basin of Medellin and the urban form, and how those two questions were related with the people and the barrios. So when we arrived to the government after, it was very important to connect and to prioritize those actions that improve and reconnect the city, and those points of tensions, combining public transport system, itineraries of improvement of the small streets and corners, and public services in different parts of the city. One of the first labs, or the most important, was the Urban Integral Project of Nororiente, the northeast part of the city, where we developed the principles of the strategy of social urbanism. So I am not going to explain in detail, but I will go through some images to leave you some ideas. So those conditions were, many of them, very complex in terms of informal. For example, this housing program. We wanted to develop a strategy that combined improvement, risk management, environmental management, at the same time, economy, local economy, trying to preserve all the population in the same place, improvement the 70% of the houses, and building some new blocks of housing, solving the problem of risk management in the creek, and located there also close to those places and public transport system that at the time where we did that was a new technology that connect telefericos with the metro stations. But the urban space was really important in relation to break the narrative of violence and this public space that we lose in the 80s and 90s, and was really important to precise and to define the itineraries of the everyday of people, of the kids and the moms and so on, and the most intensity use places, trying to develop a sequence of projects and programs and links to improve the reality of the city. So of course, we couldn't do in all the city, but we select some strategic areas, and in some way, I could say that has some success, not completely, because Medellin still have the challenge of inequality and the informal areas in many different places, but start to transform this narrative of this condition. This is other place or strategic zone in the North Zone, where it used to be the garbage disposal in '83, and the city started to develop improvements and so on. So when we finished the work in the municipality, the question, and my question was that we need at that time, and we still need, and we are working now in the Tecnológico of Monterrey, lively labs in the universities that trying to connect the reality with the knowledge, the capacity of knowledge and with the reality of experience. So we co-found Urbam in 2010 in the university, trying to connect the word urbanism, urban design and landscape design with the environment. It's urbanismo ambiente in Spanish, and with people. And trying to connect the university with the real processes in territories, with institutions as well, and the process of pedagogy. I am not going to explain what we have been doing through those years, but I will share one example. So when we finished in the municipality, of course, the work didn't finish. The city still be the same. So we helped to start to improve the process and to change the psychology of the city. But the city continued to occupy the upper part with informal and very active occupation. And the problem of the margin of the borders is different, because those processes happens recently and are very new, and most of them are located in risk areas. So it's not the solution, or the main solution is not with infrastructures of public transport system. So from Urban, we wanted to develop an alternative agenda, parallel agenda, that we connect with the environment, connect with the people. I'm not going to explain them, but we start to work with communities, how was the history of occupation and how they knowledge how to improve, to stabilize conditions. And we develop, and since then, since 2011, we have been working with community and the government and some international organizations in different processes, developing some pilot projects. We just finished the first phase of the alarm and evacuation system that we wanted to connect an app and some technology with communities. And we are proving this strategy, but we are looking now for resources to develop the other pilot projects. Our partner with Urban is Christian Werkman and his team, that he is in the Leibniz University in Hanover. But the lesson for the process, from my point of view, is that in this way, we met some wonderful people like Fernando Zapata and his organization, and they learned a lot through the process. We have been working 10 years there, and they developed different strategies with their knowledge, and they built the School of Slopes, the popular School of Slopes, and they are teaching the other places in Medellin how to improve and to have knowledge about the risk management. So the externality of the process, from my point of view, is the local capacity that is the most important, and how we could develop confidence and trust with them, but they improve and they are working by themselves with their knowledge. This is really important externality of the process. So what I am put the title Endless Process, because the reality is very complex. See the image of 2018 in relation with Moravia. This is another place of Medellin where the city developed a very powerful strategy to recover this garbage disposal with communities. But the crisis of COVID started to occupy again, and the government that we have today is not good government, and leave the area, and a process that have been really important before start to change completely, like 20 years ago. So I'm not saying that this is a reality as well. And this video happens 2 months ago in Medellin. So this is the river of Medellin, that because the raining condition that happens in the basin in Medellin, we have a long valley with more than 300 streams or creeks that go down from the slope to the river and cut all the informal areas and the formal areas. But the consequences of this is that we are impermeabilizando those areas and transforming the creeks in the upper parts. and the crisis appear in the river. So the challenge is how we reconnect this condition of environment, precarious condition, and formal areas as well, how we could develop a more natural solutions and thinking in the system, and how we could develop a process of resilience in the city, connecting people, environment, and urban design and knowledge as well. And it's really important. It's a long way, but it's important. So to end, I would like to share 2 moments now. We just end in the Tecnológico of Monterrey, in the master program of architecture and urban design. This last course, innovative for climate adaptation in Monterrey, that is about climate change and heat. And we develop beautiful strategies, and the students develop new strategies. We just end the last week the course, and it will be really important to link in this challenge of Monterrey, the climate change, the air pollution, the water management, and the heat. But the most critical situations are always with this climate goes between the friction and the crisis that connect with precarious condition and precarious communities. So this question of environmental justice is in the center today. And we have a podcast in Urban, our center in Colombia, and the focus of the podcast is to tell the history of the people that lead processes in the territories. So you could find some histories in Spanish in this podcast as well. So these are my presentation, and I told Rob that I am in the middle of workshop here, and I have to leave you now, and I cannot not be in the dialogue. I'm sorry, but thank you again.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you so much. We're nearing the end of the hour already, so thank you for being here in the first place. I know you'll have a busy day in front of you. Thank you for your exciting story as well. Okay. Maybe one key remark would be all 3 of you were talking about trust, consciousness, real experiences, and the link between that side of things and the academic world. How to establish that. So I think that will be an issue for the discussion later on. Thank you, Alejandro, for now, and see you soon.
Bye. Un abrazo.
Thank you. So what we can do at the moment is we have a little bit space for a couple of questions. Maybe we have from the audience. I'm not sure whether there are a lot of questions at the moment. Maybe one question I have to Craig and Emanuele is, how do you see this relationship? I mean, the model that you showed, Craig, of the, let's say, the blue world full of rational knowledge, moving towards the society and then bring that back into science, is somewhat similar to the story that you were talking about, Emanuele. That it's about the community's experience and the consciousness that you mentioned, bringing that back into programs and strategies for the future. So if both of you could comment on that, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I can. Emanuele, shall I go first?
Sure. Okay. Perfect, Craig.
Thank you.
Yes.
Much appreciated.
Rob and Craig, I think this relation that Craig explained between the communitarian knowledge, and the knowledge from academia and from experts and professionals, I think is the biggest challenge that we have, because somehow I think maybe in the past there was the tendency to impose, something that comes from the academia, something that comes from the practitioners. And this brought to big problems. No, for example, the modernism, they removed the idea of the context, temporal context, and geographical context, social context. So they impose something. At the same time, we cannot say that we have to just to learn from slums. We cannot make a poetic. We cannot approach within a romantic way slums, for example, or vulnerable communities, right? We have to find a way, and what Craig said was extremely interesting, a methodology to bring knowledge and make people conscious about what they are living. I have a big concern related with the rights. For example, a lot of people living in vulnerable communities, for what was my experience, yeah, they don't have idea of the rights that they have. No, so if you don't have idea of the rights that you have, you cannot ask for them. So you cannot make, you don't have political power at the end, no? And again, if you don't have political power, you are more vulnerable than other communities. So this process, I think that is the key, no, for us. And I was fascinated by what Craig said and presented.
Yeah, well, thanks, Emanuele. I think what we've found, me and my colleagues and I from various universities around Europe, we found that you know, if the starting point is zero carbon cities, you know, if that's the starting point, the ideas to get to that, the steps that you must take are radical steps. You know, we're not moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic here. You know, these are major changes. And if we want society to get on board with that, society has to be, people have to be at the beginning of that process. The minute that the pen hits the paper, the minute that those ideas come out, they need to be part of the discussion straight away, because to be presented with a radical idea at the end, after all the process has been done behind the scenes, is not going to work. You know, I don't think it's going to work. Also, the so-called experts like myself and my colleagues, we tend to leave the city as well afterwards. We tend to go, we leave Belfast, we leave Dubrovnik, we leave Izmir and all the other places, we leave. So the ideas, they stay behind, and if the community isn't on board with those ideas, the ideas leave with us in a way. So it's all involved with that. And of course, you know, like I said before, you know, people don't wake up in the morning worrying about climate change. I think they have other pressing issues. Their time frame isn't 2050. It's like in the next few hours in some of the areas we've been to. And we have to make sure that the solutions that we work together with have those dilemmas built into the sustainable solutions that we put forward. You know, I think that's the crucial thing.
Thank you both for your comments. We have an interesting question from Mariela here. It's directed to Alejandro, but since he's gone, you can shine your lights on this as well. I think what the question is about is after the process of the urban planning and the regular the rules and regulations that you put in place in these settlements, after they are in place, do these places become the areas for gentrification? I mean, that is somewhat a pity, because then the improvements they don't end up with the people that they were meant to be in the first place. So if you could shine your light on that, Craig, in the first place, and maybe later Emanuele.
Yeah. Well, that is a danger, and in some cases it's likely inevitable in some cases. But I would say that I think from my perspective on sustainability, it's all about not just about, you know, how many kilowatt hours you can produce on a roof. It's what you do with the energy that you produce. It's what economy can you instigate in an area. It's, you know, I was thinking, as Alejandro said, you know, he talked about the acupunctural method, and you have to still make changes, you know, in those areas, but ones that people are fully on board with and see the added value for their families. And if, you know, and we don't start with the idea of those areas being gentrified. You know, we start from those ideas of children being able to play in the street and kick a football around, you know, and not worry about a car not, you know, bashing into you. You know, it's all these things that adds value to your daily life, and you know, and inspires you and gives you greater aspirations. So yeah, I think if we began with worrying about gentrification, then maybe nothing would happen.
Thank you, Greg. Emanuele, do you have?
Yes, I totally agree with Craig. I mean, it's the way we make things, no? And we think in a holistic way. Of course, it's very difficult, but if we think in a holistic way and we can reach to create this environment where we give again opportunities, no, in particular economical opportunities to the residents in these communities, I think we can avoid not this phenomenon. But I believe it's the way we think and where we act.
Yeah, I think both of you are right on top of this. I mean, if we start with the idea that improvements will only be good for people that are well off in the first place, and take those areas from the people that used to live there, that's I think a whole wrong conception of the purpose of what we're doing. At the same time, there is this danger and there's a risk that is happening, not because we instigate it, but because it just happens in a natural way, because those areas become more attractive and people will start to live there, etc., etc. So I think this is only the start of this kind of discussion and dialogue that we have, and we are already a bit over the hour. So I think this is also a good moment to close the webinar. Thank you for everyone who has been watching and listening to this first urban dialogue that we have on the Just City. As I said, this is just the beginning, I guess, of a dialogue that is already ongoing for many years. But as Alejandro mentioned, it is an endless journey. It's not there is no finish and no end point to it. So it is a continuous process. Thank you to all three speakers, Alejandro, Craig, and Emanuele, for your very interesting, and I think also they were very much in line with each other. I think that was great, and I hope to see everyone in the next dialogue that we will organize in 3 weeks from now, on 19th of April, and the topic of that urban dialogue will be indigenous knowledge, and how we can make more use of the indigenous knowledge in the development of our cities. So I hope to see many of you again in 3 weeks from now. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a very, very nice day.